This is CBC Vancouver News.
And it will compensate us for the time spent on evening and weekend administrative burdens.
A new deal for family doctors in this province.
We need to make sure that we are investing in our communities.
What it means for physicians and their patients. And teachers across BC now set for a major pay bump. Also, an outgoing mayor in court. Day one of Doug McCallum's public mischief trial. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Dan is away this week. I'm Michelle Ghoussoub. Some major changes are on the way for family doctors in this province, with a new payment model meant to compensate them for office costs and after-work administration. Mira Baines has more on the deal and what it means for the many British Columbians who don't have a family physician.
I think an immediate sigh of relief, which I'm hearing from many of my colleagues.
Doctors of BC President Dr. Ramneek Dosanjh says the new deal for family physicians is the best in Canada.
Addressing the overhead and the rising costs of business is a major one in this new payment model.
At the heart of it is a new compensation model which pays family doctors more.
This payment model for family doctors will help protect and strengthen BC's healthcare system by helping to attract new family doctors and retain existing doctors.
Under the fee-for-service system, which compensates doctors per visit, a family doctor makes an average of $250,000 a year. In that amount, the province estimates they also pay $80,000 to $85,000 a year in operating costs. Details are emerging, but the new payment model would see family physicians able to earn about $385,000 a year. Health Minister Adrian Dix says family physicians can choose to leave the current fee-for-service system in February for the new payment model and expects many will. This family physician and UBC professor says the new model is attractive for people wanting to work a little longer and new doctors.
I'm also hopeful that people moving to the province or new graduates are going to be interested enough in this new model that they'll say, hey, I'd like to go and join a practice and offer a bit of new capacity or fill in for somebody who's retiring.
Still, about 1 million people in BC don't have a family doctor. There are questions over how the government plans to measure outcomes.
I am relieved that there is a step in the right direction, but again, we want to see more detail, timelines, metrics, and measurement.
She questions how patients will be matched up with doctors as capacity in the system increases.
I certainly will be looking for the capacity side of this. Does it give people a way to find out where they can be attached to a family physician?
Doctors will vote on whether to ratify the new deal in the next few weeks. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
BC teachers, meanwhile, could also see their paychecks increase soon. After 6 months of negotiations, a tentative deal has been reached that would take effect by the end of this year. The teachers' old agreement expired in June. And the CBC's Zara Premji joins us now with more. Zara, how are teachers reacting to this?
Well, Michelle, details around this deal are limited, but still teachers tell me anticipation is high. While it's a tentative agreement, the BC Teachers Federation tells CBC, if ratified, this will take teachers in BC from near the lowest paid in the country into the top tier. The BCTF says new members could see anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000 more in their annual salary. And for teachers at the top of their grids, they could see their salary jump anywhere from $10,000 to $13,000, tipping some across the $100,000 a year line.
But, more and more people are using the food banks. This is something affecting teachers as well. So that salary increase cannot come soon enough because many of us are drowning in terms of what we make and just the reality of life here in the Lower Mainland.
Zara, was pay the only issue here?
While salary was a big part of the discussion, the BCTF says there were a few other important gains, including extra time for elementary teacher prep, enhanced maternity leave, and improving counseling benefits, among a lot of other things. Both the BCTF and the BC Public School Employers Association will be casting their ballots on this deal in the coming weeks. But Ohana says this is only the first step if the province wants to retain teachers during this time of teacher shortage. Michelle.
Thank you, Zara. Our Zara Premji reporting tonight. Outgoing Surrey Mayor Doug McCallum's public mischief trial got started today. McCallum is accused of lying to police after he claimed a political opponent ran over his foot. And as Eva Yuguen-Senge reports, the woman who McCallum accused was the first witness to take the stand.
Debbie Johnstone is one of two central figures in Doug McCallum's public mischief trial, the other being Doug McCallum himself. Today, 66-year-old Johnstone took the stand and stared directly at McCallum as she testified. McCallum claims she ran over his foot in a Save-On-Foods parking lot last year. Johnstone says she was there to collect signatures for a petition in opposition to McCallum's plans for a municipal police force. She says she shouted at him to resign. He came over to her passenger window and they had a heated, profane exchange that included her calling him scaly-faced and evil. She testified he called her a loudmouth, after which she drove away, not feeling anything unusual about her car. But the Crown says McCallum later called RCMP and claimed that Johnstone hit him, and he allegedly said, quote, "I want to go after her." Johnstone says police told her she was being investigated for criminal harassment and assault with a weapon. Prosecutors played some of the footage from the Save-On-Foods parking lot to Johnstone during the trial. It appeared to show McCallum walking away after Johnstone drove away in the parking lot with no apparent sign of a limp. The Crown says the question at the heart of this trial is whether or not McCallum lied with the intent of having Johnstone charged with an offense. In cross-examination, McCallum's lawyer Richard Peck focused on Johnstone's history of attending protests in Surrey, playing her a clip of her shouting at a protest at Surrey RCMP headquarters. Peck asked about Johnstone's relationship with McCallum prior to the incident. She said she voted for him in 2018, but grew to dislike his policies and felt her voice wasn't being heard. She says she'll have more to say after the trial is over.
I've been asked to respect the court process, which is what I'm going to do. I've never done this before. And while I am able to speak right now, and I would love to tell you all my story, I am going to respect the court process, and I'm going to wait until the court is finished.
The scene outside the courthouse was just as colorful as inside. One person wore a monster mask and held up a sign reading, "Lock him up." The trial is expected to last 7 days. It's unclear whether McCallum will take the stand. Eva Yuguen-Senge, CBC News, Surrey.
BC's Public Safety Minister says police are out in full force this Halloween night to ensure that there isn't a repeat of the weekend violence in Vancouver.
Well, what we've seen is around Halloween is, drunken morons, to put it bluntly, who've had too much to drink, getting into fights with each other, and that's what we've seen on Halloween, and the police are going to be out in full force, and we'll have zero tolerance for that kind of behavior.
Police are searching for suspects after two separate incidents that left 5 people with stab wounds over the weekend. The VPD says 3 people were wounded in one fight near Oak and Broadway. The victims were all men in their 20s from White Rock. Less than an hour later, there was a second incident on Granville Street that left 2 people with knife wounds. None of the injuries are believed to be life-threatening. A public notification has been issued for a high-risk violent sex offender who plans to live in Metro Vancouver. Dan Deacon is white, 6 feet tall, and weighs 284 pounds, with gray hair and brown eyes. He has a lengthy criminal history dating back to 1988 that includes convictions for sexual offenses. The province warns he poses a significant risk of offending against boys under the age of 16. Deacon is subject to monitoring. His conditions state he cannot own or possess any weapons or attend any public places where anyone 16 and younger might be, among other conditions. Well, some good news for local soccer fans eager to head out on the town and watch the Men's World Cup in November. The province says bars and restaurants can temporarily extend their hours from November 20th to December 18th because host nation Qatar is 10 hours ahead. Pubs and eateries can't serve booze any later than they normally do, but customers will be able to get non-alcoholic drinks. The government says it's also a way to help restaurants recover from the pandemic. The province previously expanded hospitality hours during the 2010 Winter Olympics and the 2015 Rugby World Cup. Well, families and kids at BC Children's Hospital did not miss out on trick-or-treating today after Halloween was brought to them.
Celebrations and traditions are absolutely critical. Should a child and family wish to participate? Should they typically participate? Joyful experiences, laughter, fun, music, celebrations are critical to a child on a healthcare journey. It really lends to the overall state of well-being.
McKillop says about 1,500 kids got to experience Halloween festivities today, thanks to staff, volunteers, and donors. Trick-or-treat stations were set up throughout the hospital for all kids wanting to dress up. This was the 6th year in a row trick-or-treating has been held at the hospital.
We're going to try to get it tranquilized and capture it, because obviously for some reason it's orphaned.
Coming up next, we have the story of an animal shelter taking in orphaned bear cubs. Stay with us. Thank you for joining our commercial-free live stream. Halloween is here, but for a couple of businesses in Regina, it's spooky season all year round.
My wife and I have both been the fan of kind of skulls and weird items. We've also been collectors of like action figures and different things like that. We carry all range of things, horror, just anything weird, and we also have pop culture kind of items as well, pro wrestling. Most people that come here are very happy that Regina finally has a store like this. You know, we don't hate it when people call us a Halloween store, but I prefer to be called a weird store. The most reaction that I have is that this is the greatest store ever, and I have a lot of repeat customers that come in, and I've met so many awesome people, like just through the store alone, and that just makes me so happy right there. So.
Actually, what got me into magic was a trip to Salem, Massachusetts over October and Halloween a few years ago. I attended a seance there, and the medium relayed a message to me about my recently departed grandma, and I thought that was the coolest, and I just wanted to explore more. Well, it's full of clothing, accessories, artwork that I design and print myself. I also share space with the Broom Closet Witchcraft Supply Shop, so you'll find herbs, incense, candles, all things you can use in spell work or manifesting. Halloween is a special time for witches because it's the new year. It's also called Samhain. So it's the end of harvest, the beginning of winter, kind of a time for new beginnings, and it's a time when the veil between our world and the spirit world is at its thinnest. Billy's one of my favorite things. He's our employee of the month. Billy is a character from Hocus Pocus, and I saw that movie when I was 9 years old, and it was mind-blowing for me. It was one of my first introductions to witches, so pretty special for me. People come in here for magical supplies all year long.
Okay. Well, does it work?
Of course, 100%.
Bears are a big part of BC's landscapes, but living near and around them can be a challenge. Between 2021 and 2022, conservation officers killed 500 black bears in the province, sometimes leaving orphaned cubs all alone. But a shelter in Smithers takes care of the animals who would otherwise have to fend for themselves. Radio-Canada video producer Camille Vernet was there to see a rescue.
Angelica Langen is on the move.
I'm going up to Houston. Possible orphaned bear cub.
Up in a tree, a bear cub is in trouble.
We're going to try to get it tranquilized and capture it, because obviously for some reason it's orphaned. Just a patience game. He's just out of reach of our equipment. If we don't get them to the shelter at this time of year, they have no chances. They die. It's incredibly hard to walk away, because you don't know if you get another chance.
After a stressful wait, they managed to sedate the cub.
We're both super happy that we were able to get her.
One for her now. I have two.
At the shelter, the team identifies the orphans.
We keep them as natural as possible, even with feeding, so feeding natural foods as much as we can, and with minimum human contact. They usually just have contact with their caretakers and nobody else.
Bears will spend a year in their care and then be released back into the wild.
These big traps we use to release grizzly bears.
In 2007, the nonprofit tried the same experiment with grizzly bears.
The aim is to prove that you can rewild a grizzly bear just as well as you can do a black bear. We definitely had to adapt our way of dealing with them. They're way more intelligent than the black bears are. I think we're getting a pretty good handle on it. It gets better every year, and the bears seem to be coping better out there.
Clayton Lamb studies human and grizzly bear coexistence across the province.
When you rehabilitate cubs, it's an incredibly resource-intensive endeavor that has varied success.
He says more can be done to prevent grizzly bear death in the first place.
By the time people get their attractants electric fenced or they spend more time in the wild with bear spray, I think that that feeling of coexistence can, be greatly increased because people, they have less problems with bears.
In much of BC, finding a bear in your backyard isn't at all that unusual.
That's what you get when you live in their neighborhood. They're neighbors, like I always say, like, oh, the neighbor just walked through the yard, and then it's the bear with the tiny cub.
She says the shelter is not meant to be a solution to conflicts.
It's better that they stay with their mom. People just take ownership of their property and secure their attractants.
This year, 71 bears and 5 grizzlies will be released. That's almost double the number they had the year before and speaks to the challenge of education.
Because people are not managing their attractants and there's more bears in the area, so there's a higher chance of accidents and so on because bears are moving away from each other, because territories get smaller.
These bears are ready to return to nature.
To get animals in that are orphaned or sick or tiny or emaciated, bring them back to a good health, and then see them go back into the wild where they belong. That's amazing. That's the most rewarding feeling I can imagine.
But true success for this organization is not being needed in the first place. Camille Vernet, Radio-Canada, Smithers.
One person is dead and another is in hospital after a shooting in front of an East Toronto high school. Police responded to reports of a shooting at Woburn Collegiate Institute around 3:30 this afternoon. One male victim was pronounced dead in hospital. Police say the second person who was shot was a teenage boy who walked into a hospital and was taken to a trauma center. The high school and a nearby school for kindergarten through grade 6 students were placed in lockdown but have since reopened, and police are looking for a suspect. Well, bats are seen a lot at this time of year on Halloween decorations, but it also happens to be International Bat Week. That's a campaign to dispel myths around the animals and protect their populations. And in BC, cities are jumping on board. And as Susanna De Silva reports, time is of the essence.
So hopefully we're going to see a little bit of guano.
Danielle Dagenet works as a crusader, minus the cape, to break through the mystery and dispel the myths around bats.
So it's a natural pest control. As the bats go down, insects are going to go up, pesticides are going to go up, crops are going to be devastated.
A bat can eat 1,000 insects an hour on summer nights, just one of many reasons her group is working with cities like Richmond to protect them, one of a handful in BC designated as bat-friendly. It's set up a bat condo, a place for female bats to raise the one pup they have each year in the summer. Dagenet is checking to see if anyone has visited.
It's a slow process, but the objective is to get them in, and the more we get them in here and get them in a regular roost, then we can attract them to other parts of the city.
A stronger population may also mean better resistance to an approaching threat. White nose syndrome, a fungus that disturbs the sleep of hibernating bats, causing starvation and death. It has nearly wiped out some populations in eastern Canada, and it's making its way west. It's in neighboring Washington state and may already be here in BC.
We have so much to learn in honestly quite a short period of time.
BC has the widest variety of species in the country, but scientists say research on them is lacking because they are nocturnal and elusive, but also because of false myths around the amount of disease they spread, the potential for bites, and even fear about them perpetuated by Halloween.
In the West, we don't even know where they hibernate, so there's no way we're going to ever get into places that show you piles of dead bats. And so they're just kind of disappearing into crevices and maybe just not coming back out.
To help learn more, researchers are even dressing up poles as old-growth trees using a fake bark to provide more habitat for bats being forced out by development, and they double as places to study the world's only flying mammal.
Almost half of the baby bats that are born die every year.
Part of protecting them comes through education, like this impromptu lesson to an elementary class passing by.
Nobody seemed scared or hesitant. They all just seemed really interested.
And it's those moments where it makes me feel like, you know, I'm doing a good job.
Wider knowledge of bats, plus some signs this condo may have had some tenants. A good day, Dagenet says, helping one of nature's most underappreciated species. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Richmond, BC.
Here's a live shot of Georgia Street. Kuljeet will have your full forecast next.
The National with George McLean.
The road is still out between Vancouver and Squamish, 100 kilometers to the north. In both places and in between, hundreds of residents are cleaning up after floods caused by heavy rains. Genevieve Westcott reports.
For the people of Squamish, it's the second time in less than a year that heavy rains and severe flooding have devastated their homes. Last Boxing Day, hundreds of residents were forced to flee because of torrential rains. This weekend, the horrified people watched it happen all over again.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see if the government's going to help again this year.
Did the government help you out last year?
Oh, yes. You see, we lost everything last year. We weren't prepared at all. We helped out. We paid for everything. Clothes, fridges, freezers, and everything.
Promises of provincial relief funds to compensate them for their million-dollar losses are little comfort to people like the Andrews. They say reimbursement takes months and is often insufficient. When Bob Ward bought his home 7 years ago, nobody told him it was sitting square on the floodplains. He's angry that developers were allowed to build here in the first place. Now he says he can't afford to move. Do you think you'll continue to live here in light of what's happened the last 2 years? Why is that?
I can't just walk out on it, can I? I could raise it, I guess, but I don't know.
The town itself is particularly susceptible to flooding because of high tides in Howe Sound and the melting snow in nearby mountains. Many residents suggest the effects of the rains could have been lessened had the government completed diking along the banks of the rivers. The town's merchants say they're running short of food and fuel. Rail and road links to Squamish were severed by washouts. Crews are working frantically to repair a washout at Furry Creek, which lies about 15 kilometers north of M Creek, scene of last week's tragedy which saw a mudslide wash out the bridge, leaving 5 people dead and 4 others missing. Genevieve Westcott, CBC News, Squamish.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Celebrate Chinese Canadian music and entertainment at the Jade Music Festival, November 28th to December 3rd. View the schedule at jmfa.ca. And on December 7th, join Anita Bath and a panel of Indigenous business leaders at the Surrey Board of Trade's online Entrepreneur Showcase. Register for the free discussion today at businessinsurrey.com.
Well, when night falls on this night of the year, neighborhoods are filled with goblins, witches, and lots of things wicked. But perhaps nowhere was spookier than a house in Burnaby that took home the top prize of $1,000 for its intricate decorations.
Oh, they were overjoyed because they put so much work into telling their story from Chile, which is the country they're from, and speaking with the dead growing up. So they had a great theme to their setup. So I think that's what the judges liked. We had a marking system, and that's how this family here was chosen to be the winners, because of the great story they told, as well as the great work they put into decorating. Okay.
Burnaby is in year 2 of its 5-year plan to become Canada's #1 Halloween destination. Mayor Mike Hurley was inspired by his hometown of Derry, Ireland, which is Europe's favorite Halloween spot. And while the focus has been largely family-oriented, Hurley says things will get seriously scary in the future.
Based on what they did in Derry, and that's maybe a bit more scariness to it than we're doing right now. Right now we're really relating it to families, but I think we need to add in, some more real Halloween traditions of scariness and, just making people want to come and see the surprises that there may be in store for them.
Burnaby hosted 24 events this year, including a zombie walk, pumpkin carving, scary movie screenings, and creepy art installations. Hurley says every event they hosted has sold out. Next year, the city plans to partner with schools and the movie industry to turn Burnaby into Halloween Town.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
And Kuljeet Kaila joins us now for a look at the weather. Turned into a beautiful day today, but is this going to last?
It was a nice, calm day outside today. It is going to last for a couple of more days, but we will see some precipitation on Tuesday and then a lot more towards the end of the week, with another system moving in on Thursday and sitting around until Friday. So be prepared for that rain towards the end of the week, and it will linger on into the weekend as well. Here's some rainfall accumulation that we can expect over the next couple of days. Still traces of rain for Tuesday and Wednesday. Not as bad as we've seen, but we will get more rain, like I said, towards the end of the week on Thursday and Friday. Here are some totals to look for in Vancouver and the Tri-Cities, up to 40 millimeters of rain and a bit more in Abbotsford as well. For the forecast for tomorrow across BC, temperatures looking like this, and they're starting to drop again, as I've mentioned before. Williams Lake will be at 6 degrees, 8 degrees in Lytton, 8 in Kelowna, and still double digits in the Fraser Valley at 12 degrees. And the temperature drops around the province look like this, especially for Fort Nelson, going from -6 to -16 by the end of the week. Kelowna is going to see a significant drop as well. So getting colder as well towards the end of the week. For Metro Vancouver, like I said, all that rain coming on Thursday and Friday. Be prepared for that. A bit of a break on Saturday, and then we're back to the rain on Sunday as well. Gumboots, keep them nearby.
Okay, maybe time to get the winter jacket out of storage.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks so much. And that is your late news for this Halloween Monday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news anytime, visit our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. Good night and happy Halloween.